Start us off, Carter.
And welcome back to the MCU, everyone's favorite show where two random guys talk to Soldier Boy himself about his MCU opinions. Carter here.
Hold on. I'm making sure I'm Kevin.
You
Uh,
are.
I know. I'm just making sure my mic is being picked. All right, my mic's being picked up. We're good. Had to double check. Couldn't have a repeat of that one time. Um,
Yes, but we are here to interview Soldier Boy himself about his takes of the current MCU slate, including Loki Season 2 and The Marvels, taking Marvel where it's never gone before, female. Unfortunately, for the 57th straight week, Soldier Boy himself cannot be here, so it's mostly just going to be us this week. But actually, this is Carter and Kevin Explain Football. Carter here.
I'm Kevin, and I want to talk to Soldier Boy about his failed game system he wanted to
Oh,
start.
God, I forgot about that. Oh, yeah. Isn't it wild? Just wild we live in a world where if you have enough money, you can just do things like that. And it just slides off your back.
Yep, kind of crazy stuff.
Um, yes, but we are here for to recap week 9. We have officially hit the halfway point of the NFL season. I'm pretty sure at this point, every team. Oh, no, there's a few who haven't, but damn near every team has played a full 9 games, and that means they're at the halfway point for this season.
Yeah, so I would classify this like because everyone gets at least one bye week, but there's still 18 weeks of games. So right now, in between weeks 9 and 10, is like the theoretical calendar of halfway through the season.
Yes, yes. We have a lot of interesting. It was an interesting week for football. It was kind of the Stars and Scrubs week where every sort of time slot on Sunday had a premier game, but everything else was kind of mid.
Yeah, you can say that. I can support
Shall we
that
dive
argument.
in?
Yeah, let's get right into it. So I like to start us off with a nice solid baby boy check-in. We got a couple of cast pods baby boys for this
Just
season.
grown adults. Grown adults, we called our baby
Our
boys.
baby
Pretty sure they can
boys.
all legally drink.
I'm pretty sure
My
they can
boy!
too. We also call them our sweet summer children. Um,
Our
let
little lavender dewdrops.
yeah. Let's start with the big one. Let's start with our favorite child, C.J.
Mhm.
Stroud. Now
Yes.
I'm gonna be honest. If so, he was, in my opinion, the definite first pick of a uh, for the rookie quarterbacks, and whoever got the first pick that needed a quarterback should have definitely taken him.
Yes.
I'm 90% sure you can quote me in that when we're talking about the draft.
Right. I think I will say I leaned more toward Anthony Richardson, but in terms of the top two being Bryce Young and Stroud,
Yeah,
I'm very glad I locked in and doubled down on my CJ Stroud stock. I We look very smart right now.
we look like we know what we're talking about, and we didn't just get lucky. But also, I feel like there is there's definitely a luck element because he's on in a historically bad team of the Texans. And I mean, they've had their
Yes.
good seasons, but like, there's two teams the last handful of years, I would say last 5 years, you can refer to as like almost guaranteed wins easily. And well, before this season, of course, and it was like the Texans, the Lions, the Browns, like they were all pretty much guarantees. All right, you probably got this one in the bag.
Right, right.
And now we're
But not
switching things up.
anymore. Yes, the Houston Texans are competent. They ended up playing, and we have this in our Don't Sleep On game. Your Don't Sleep On
Yep.
game. This might have been the game of the one of the games of the season so far. A back and forth barn burner. It had it all. Our star baby boy throwing for 5 touchdowns and setting a rookie record for most passing yards.
Which is
Tank,
insane.
yes, the most unlikely people getting a touchdown, the Texans having to go to a fullback or running back to kick their field goals because their kicker injured himself mid game. Um, a dramatic final sequence where on the last 2 drives, Baker Mayfield led his plucky Tampa Bay Buccaneers to a 60-yard touchdown drive, leaving only about a minute to go in the game, only to have CJ Stroud himself lead his team down in heroic fashion, win the game, and win 39-37. Honestly, it truly is one of the most incredible performances we've ever seen from a rookie quarterback. Not just for pure numbers, but just from sort of poise, confidence, competence, and like being locked in from minute one to the final whistle.
Yeah. Which, first off, this game was 100% the definition of a barn burner. Nobody can deny that. And it was not like, if you look at the scoring drives for, give me 1 second, I was re-looking at what I already declared to be the Don't Bother game of the week. I'm so glad I have D&D during that. Because it gives me a reason.
I just remembered that. Yucky.
But if you look at the scoring on the, if you score with 46 seconds left, I apologize. That's, in most teams' opinion, of a, like, you got that locked. You got that 99%. And to pull off a 40-minute drive. 40-second drive, yeah.
If ESPN is to be believed, once the first play of the drive, Tampa Bay had a 90.8% chance of winning the game.
Yeah. And they also went for like 4 2-point conversions, and most of them failed. But it's like they balled hard. Both teams balled very hard.
Yeah. They were playing with a hand tie. Their kicker was hurt, and I will say it seems like that might have helped them a little bit in terms of being daring, in terms of like, okay, we can't rely on field goals. They did end up making one field goal with Dare Ogunbowale, a running back who was apparently just their backup kicker.
Yeah.
There was a lot of discourse this week about why punters can't just kick field goals, but I digress. Truly extraordinary. Someone mentioned Eli Manning. Yeah. Someone mentioned Eli Manning in one of the first Manning casts. Is like, honestly, it's kind of better to be down 4 because then your coach is just going to let you play and not be risk averse. And this was the embodiment of that, of like, we can't afford to just kick field goals. We will miss most of them. So we are going to have to sling it around the yard, and CJ Stroud proved it. And it just, I don't know, it's just a nice story because he was weirdly scrutinized throughout the entire draft process. Like, oh, can he create? Is he able to run? He tested poorly on this, like, I forget what they call it, like S2 exam.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be some kind of mystery, like, logistics test that like tests how you can process under pressure.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's not very good, evidently.
You're getting quizzed on something or something else. I don't really know enough to validate it or disapprove it. But I think before like the combine and all the tests and stuff, he was like a crowd favorite to be first.
Mm-hmm.
And that the testing in the combine, because I watched videos of him just slinging the ball during like the combine.
His actual play during the combine was great. It was everything else around that they decided was questionable.
And I feel like what a like not disappointment, but I'm trying to think of the best. I think that sobered up the Panthers to him with his testing and stuff, and that might be the biggest mistake they've ever made.
Honestly, again, I know we've teased them a lot, and I don't hold, I still think Bryce Young can be a good quarterback in this NFL, but good Lord, and the problem is, it really does feel like the owner was the one who really like tipped the scale. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? The owner's not going to fire himself for making a bad decision.
Yeah. He's not going to fire himself. He's not going to just all of a sudden get up and sell the team.
Right.
But there is so many there's so many things, like so many draft busts and stuff over the years where you pick them and you're just like, ooh, maybe this is good, and then you go
Mm.
like you really think about it and it's just like, ooh, I was wrong. And
Yes.
I feel like he was one of those picks that could have been like, at first it was like okay, maybe the Panthers are seeing something that the rest of us aren't seeing, and it was definitely those test results. Um, but you don't see like, if you just look at how he's been treating himself the entire time, and also shout out to the Texans for making some pretty ballsy moves very early in that draft, where
Hmm.
they had the second pick, they traded up for the third pick, and it could have seemed like a wasted move, but it was definitely like, but picking Will Anderson Jr., great move. I believe
Oh yeah. I mean, again, we question the process in the moment, but in the end of the day, it looks smart now because it's paying off. You have the two things that this franchise has lacked basically in its entire existence. You know, you
yeah,
have two like leaders, like stable core, gonna be here for 6 to 10 years, people in charge.
yeah, and it's, you got some, they're setting themselves up for success
Hmm.
compared to some other teams, which I believe we did talk about them making some questionable choices
Oh yes.
during their draft picks. Which next draft we should definitely go live and in person, not live and in person as in we will be there, but like live stream with it. Um,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, some great moves were made by the Texans, and we're happy for our baby boy. And he's also just proving himself off the field too.
Yeah, he's a leader. Honestly, he took like a part of his interview. He was just discussing a situation with his dad and talking about sort of like the police system and its flaws. And it's just like you just had the most incredible game of your life, and you're taking a moment to talk about this. Good for you. Um, yeah, no, I genuinely love the guy. I'm very happy I get to watch him play football for the next like 10 years, hopefully.
Yeah, no.
Um,
And
Shall we move on? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and he seems like one of those people that you genuinely don't can't be mad at. Not. I'm
Oh,
not saying he hasn't, like, he hasn't given anything yet to be like, oh, this guy, he's causing problems. It's like,
right. He seems like a leader.
he's definitely a locker room leader, and you love to see that. Huh. All right, next.
Next up, we have Jordan Love. After a really rough four-game skid, the Packers finally get their get right game going against the Los Angeles Rams, 20-3.
Yeah.
Jordan Love had a solid outing, 20 completions out of 26 attempts and a touchdown. Um, the Rams found themselves kind of listless after losing Matthew Stafford to
Yeah.
his thumb injury. And like, look, this isn't the most exciting game in the world. This is kind of like a perfectly serviceable performance for the Packers. But when you're on a four-game losing streak and your owner is suddenly like their owner came out and was like, I don't know if we're going to extend anyone yet, including Jordan Love. This is the game you needed to get off the mat and just sort of recalibrate your season around.
Yeah.
So I would say, a nice unsexy. This is the kind of games you need to win as a young team
Yeah.
performance.
This this was one of those. I wouldn't say it was a job saving game. Like, you're not
Yeah.
locking in your jobs with that, but you're pushing the conversation off with that kind of win.
Oh yeah.
You show up because, and like, let's talk about the last couple of weeks too, where the Packers were looking like the Packers of last year,
Mhm.
and they were not doing what's the word? Amazing, phenomenal, good, eh,
Competent.
competent,
Vibes were off.
and they now have that cushion of being a very young team. If
Right.
if they were doing this caliber with the same team from last year, I think there would be a lot of problems.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. This is the kind of game you need to win to have their young and still curating talent
Yeah.
explanation to be like usable. Like you can't lose against Brett Rippon, a man who's never started in the NFL before, um, and is now I think back on their practice squad. Um,
I think so.
and yeah, well, that's what we got to talk about next while we're in the neighborhood. Like, you can't afford to lose this game, and this lets you take a deep breath and say, basically, I hate to use the phrase excuse, but it's the one game that lets you have an excuse and
Hmm.
gives everyone in the front office another chance to like get ready for next year.
Yeah.
Um, and on the Rams note, we've made a lot of jokes at the expense of Carson Wentz in our time,
Oh,
as is our
I meant
God-given
to add
right
this,
as
but I didn't.
Philadelphians.
Yeah. Whew.
Carson Wentz is a
Carson.
fucking Los Angeles Ram.
Man, what a news story to put on my bingo card. I would have. You know what?
100 years wouldn't have been prepared for that one.
I'm gonna call this. I'm gonna call this right now. Next year, because this is pilot year. Next year we'll come in. We'll do a. We'll do live draft reactions. We will do a. And we will set up a bingo card. And we will think of some of the most. Actually, hear me out.
Nonsense.
Yeah, let's do two bingo cards: a draft bingo card and a like just what could happen this season, this up next season bingo card. And we'll create a bunch of prompts, and we'll just randomize it into bingo cards. And then for the draft one, we'll get drunk and play bingo.
Hell yeah. Yes, What if it's good? I don't know. Like Sean McVay basically being like, and now I will perform my greatest feat yet, making Carson Wentz likable. Clearly, obviously, it means Matthew Stafford's thumb is probably a little worse than they had originally hoped. I feel bad for the Rams. They're in a tricky spot because they're another team who could argue they're young. Half their base is young, half their base is old, and they're just good enough that they can't fully just throw in the towel for this year.
Yeah,
They have to like put in an effort.
they can't. They can't just blow it in the same regard that some other teams are pretty much clearly blowing it. I'm looking at
Mhm.
you, Giants. Um,
Yeah, we will get to that.
but with picking up Carson Wentz, who's I'm not going to say he's an amazing quarterback at this day and age because I feel like that's unfair to some of the quarterbacks that are actually in their prime.
Mhm.
But he has had a good track record and he has had a good presence before. And to pick him up is definitely without much discretion. That's not a week to week basis pickup.
Right.
If you wanted a week to week thing, you're gonna you're gonna pick up someone's former backup or something like that. Or in a funny situation, bring out Peyton Manning off of retirement, which that would just get the laughs.
Oh, I think his arm wasn't working right that last year. I can't imagine he can throw a football more than 5 yards anymore.
Oh no, definitely not.
His arm was a noodle that last
Yeah, you
year.
know
Like
what?
I know he won the Super Bowl and that's good, but like good God, those games.
Just bring on Arch Manning. Manning. Is it Archie?
Is he,
He's
yeah, it's
he's in
Archie.
college, but it's fine.
Yeah, just create some kind of Manning exception. Um, I actually no wait, he's still in high school. I don't think he is he on the he's
I
going
think
to Texas. I don't know if he's on the team right
I
now
think he
though.
is on the team.
He's
I
just not
think he
playing.
Yeah, I think he's technically a backup.
Well, that was an interesting discourse I was listening to this week, where people are talking about this is the most rookie quarterbacks who are playing since the quote unquote replacement era, which
Hmm.
was the era where it's like guys who would normally be playing football are currently liberating Europe. Um, and like, yeah, so it's pretty dire out there. And it is so interesting some of the quarterbacks who are getting to play just because it's like a lot of Gardner Minshew guys who played at smaller colleges but played all 4 years. So it's like there's a comfort in knowing you've had enough reps that if a guy is running at you at full speed, you're not going to immediately do something insane. you're just going to get the ball away or lie down and take a sack. Like
Mm-hmm.
so many of these, like so many quarterbacks who play for like the big schools, it's like maybe they get 1 year worth of reps at most because like Alabama has like a factory of quarterbacks now. It's like
Yeah.
they go from Hurts to Tua to Mac to Bryce to someone important, someone good now. Like at best, most of them are getting like a year, and that's not a lot of football.
No.
But I digress. Yeah, it's an interesting. This is equivalent to the Baker Mayfield thing they did last year. It's like you get a career rehabilitation. We get someone just good enough that we can talk a lot of the older guys into not retiring or asking for trades, and then we all wash our hands of this and get ready for next season.
Yeah.
Our other fave, the Indianapolis Colts, currently without our friend Anthony Richardson. The final score does not fully capture the complete mollywhopping the 27-13 beating of the Carolina Panthers was. Again, we have a friend who is a Carolina Panthers fan, and I want to be nice. I truly, truly want to be nice.
They just make it
But
hard.
Bryce Young had two of the worst interceptions I've ever seen in a football field. This guy might be seeing ghosts because he's running for his life every play. Throw it directly to a defender who promptly returns it for a touchdown. That's the funny thing. The Colts' offensive stats are not pretty. Like, they were averaging about 2 yards a carry, and Minshew had 127 yards, but 14 of their points came from defense.
Yeah.
Truly. I almost put this as my don't sleep on game, but it was simply too silly and too nonsensical a game to put there.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, part of me wanted to bring this up because a couple weeks ago, week 6, is when Anthony Richardson was like announced to take a season-ending surgery. And as one of our baby boys, I feel like there's obviously not going to be much news about him outside of surgery. It was a success and stuff. And it's still far too close for him to be pulling like the Aaron Rodgers, just sitting there in the booth or wherever he sits.
Do not care for it. But I feel like that went without saying.
Yeah, but the team without him is pretty interesting. Because this is their third game they've played since he was hurt, and it was their first win during that time period.
Their first win?
Well, in the last 3 weeks.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
It sounds less bad when I remember the timeline shorter than I think it is.
Yeah, no. So they lost to the Browns by 1 point. They lost by 11 points to the Saints last week, and then they just won. How are we feeling about that? And for actually every game this season, I think they've scored over 20 points, which is kind of insane. In the theoretical sense of you pick up like, not you pick up, but you play the exact same and get the exact same score against the other team who played a different team who has the same, and they just happen to score the same amount. They would have won a lot of games this week with that.
Yeah.
Like, even through their losses. So it's kind of just interesting.
Again, this is another proof of concept team because the offense they're running is fundamentally different than the one they wanted to start the year in, which, comes with the fact that Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson are radically different quarterbacks with radically different play styles.
Yeah.
It was silly. It's literally what happened last year with the Eagles, honestly, where it's like, oh, Jalen, we were really hoping Jalen Hurts wouldn't get hurt. Sorry, Gardner. This is an offense you are fundamentally not built to run correctly. So let's just have fun out there. Obviously even between Anthony Richardson and Hurts, they're pretty different backs, but I digress.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a very similar thing. And the fact that they're still winning in spite of that is just a nice morale boost of like, see what this team that is fundamentally not, I don't want to say it's fundamentally not a team, but it's like, it's really hard to play the sport when you have a very specific vision on what you want to do and then you just can't. Like, you just don't have the players, you don't have the pieces. So to keep persevering is like a testament to their building a good culture, and there is enough talent in the room that when Richardson comes back, they're going to be in a good place.
Yeah.
Like, I guess my only complaint is I'm not pro tanking, and like, we'll have a lot of talk about tanking as we get deeper into this year, but
Mm-hmm.
I still want them to get a high enough draft pick to at least. I mean, they're not going to get Marvin Harrison Jr., but this is a really good wide receiver class, and I just really want them to get one real dog as a wide receiver,
I
like
mean,
the one thing Andrew Luck never really had.
they have the potential to trade up for a real dog, and I feel like at the rate they're going, no, excuse me, at the rate they're going, they are in. I don't know why everyone. I guess because it is the halfway point through the season, but I've been seeing a lot of posts about if the season ended today, here's who would be in. Here's what your playoff picture would be. Here's what
Hmm.
this picture would be. Here's what your draft order picture would be. And they are in. I believe they're in that middle, like 10 to 20 range. They're not the bottom 10. They're not the top handful. They're in that like early middle part, which is, in my opinion, quite a primo spot to trade up to if you're in that little like that range and you're looking to trade up and throw in a later round pick as well. I feel like you can make some easy moves.
Oh yeah, I definitely like. They'll be in a good place. I'm so curious how the rest of the year goes for them, like in terms of like vibes and direction. It
Okay.
like again, it's more of like a team I'm looking forward to seeing their off season than I am to see their moment to moment.
Yeah. All right. So they, as of right now, through like even through trades and stuff, they are projected to get the 13th pick, according to somebody on a website that does the math for me. So I was right, Middleton, and I'm looking at some like right now it's like it looks like Arizona, Chicago, Chicago, and those guys need those picks desperately. But
Yeah.
you can I feel like you can finagle something with like Tampa, who's got the eighth pick, or like New England, who's got the fifth pick. And the Giants and Rams kind of need the help that they are missing at the rate they're going.
Yeah. Um, in other highs, um, Josh Dobbs gives us the story of the year. So, where to begin with this one? So, okay.
It's a wild
Okay.
ride.
Yes. So, and I'm glad this was chronicled very well because as crazy as I never thought I would live to hear this, but like when you tell the story of this NFL season, when you tell the story of what happened in the 2023 NFL football season, who would have guessed that Josh Dobbs would be a core part of the story?
Yeah.
So I did not know going into this game he was not prepared to play. They were like, he's gotten here too soon. He hasn't learned the offense yet. The
Mm-hmm.
plan is to have Jaron Hall, a rookie, play. Shortly into the game, after a few drives, he gets knocked out of the game.
Big boo boos.
Joshua, yeah, Joshua Dobbs has no choice but to go in. They show him on the sideline meeting with the offensive linemen and learning the cadences. Like they are teaching him these specific calls you use to indicate what play you're using,
Mm-hmm.
like what reads you're reading, and how to snap the ball. Literally, the basically like the password to get into the club that is running a play. He's learning the
Oh yeah.
passwords. He
And
doesn't know the plays, so he's getting them called in. He says it to the offense. The offense explains where they're going, literally like backyard football stuff, and then he has to go out there and try to execute it.
yeah. And it's not like backyard football where you're just like saying get open and then you just make up some calls. Like these are intricate systems of words and phrases and numbers, so everybody knows what they're doing. And to learn that on the sideline 2 seconds before you start playing, pretty much. Insane.
Mhm. Yeah, truly heroic stuff. And it started out bad. He took a safety on basically one of his first plays. Then he had a really bad fumble, and it was like, God, this is such a bummer for him. Like he just got left out there to die. Ends up leading a comeback to end all comebacks. They were down 21-13 at one point, tied the game, took the lead, lost the lead, and then led a final 11 play, 75-yard touchdown drive. Like at one point, he got hurt, and it looked like Cam Akers, who's their emergency quarterback, would have to play quarterback. He ends up tearing his Achilles
Yeah,
tendon, which is
until
a
his
fucking
Achilles
bummer
too.
for him because he already tore it. Just truly one of the bigger bummer stories of the NFL that his career just keeps stalling out.
Yeah.
And Joshua Dobbs does it. He gets the game football. Harrison Phillips lifts him on his shoulders like he's a toddler, even though he's a 230-pound man.
Oh
Truly
yeah.
one of the nicest stories of the NFL season.
It's it's also a wild ride too. If you look at some of the like what first off, just the quarterback situation in Minnesota. Like longtime quarterback Kirk
Mm.
has a leg injury, and also if I feel like it, I'd be remiss to not say it, but if the players don't mention the leg injuries this year on turf, they're missing an opportunity because two huge
This year
names.
feels particularly profound.
It feels like I think last year brought awareness to it and people are kind of like processing it. But if you're really looking at it this year, it's just like Jesus Christ, all these injuries on turf. Um,
Now that I feel like because it's happening to quarterbacks, that'll help a little bit too.
oh yeah, and it's not lower ranking quarterbacks too. It is big names with Kirk and like we have our Caspod baby boys, but Kirk
Mhm.
Cousins and Aaron Rodgers are definitely NFL baby boys.
Yeah, I like that.
Um, yeah, they're up there with Mahomes and Herbert. But Dobbs is what a tale because he also has been through technically I think 5 teams within the last year. Just
Yes.
it
Five
was
from the like in the last 365
yeah,
days.
it was like Cleveland, Tennessee, back to Cleveland, Arizona, now the Vikings. Which any significant other or family he has, just don't bother moving for a hot minute. Just play it safe. Um, but the amount of teams he's been on, which is kind of crazy, and then he was on one of the biggest blunder teams of this season with the Arizona Cardinals.
Mhm.
Uh, their 1-8 record being
But
technically the
was
worst
just good
team.
enough that they were willing to get rid of him as to not let them win more games.
Yeah, that we'll talk about that when we talk about throwing it for the season a little bit more. Um, but to return, goes to the Vikings, learns on the sidelines, and helps lead to a win for a team that is now on a killer win streak
Hmm.
because they were
Yes,
down. They were down in the dumps.
yeah, because there's a very real chance that Josh Dobbs gets to play in a playoff game this year, and I sincerely hope that's the case. I have no
Yeah,
love for the Vikings, but like this man has been through too much and done too much for this sport not to
yeah,
get to play in a playoff game. A man who very much seems like one of those guys who's in the NFL, but is already has like the next career ready to go,
yeah.
and yet here he is getting to do cool stuff and getting to basically be a hero. Like this is a heroic story.
This is definitely a hero's tale right here, and now he's got Justin Jefferson starting to get back into the swing of practices and stuff away from the IR. And I don't know about you, but I think Dobbs can throw. He didn't have a lot of hands to throw it to when he was in Arizona, but
Right.
to have one of the best sets of hands in the NFL coming back, they might be leading a big return arc. Like this
Oh
is going to be
yeah.
their villain arc. Somebody call all the people that believe that the NFL is scripted for this return arc.
Right. Yeah. Like I'm one of those people who's like it's too much work to rig something this big. But like this is the one, like this is the Mr. Police moment where they gave us all the clues,
Hmm.
where it's like, oh, sure, this is something that can actually happen. But yeah, he like again, like people talk about like, oh, why don't the Jets go get this backup quarterback? Why didn't this team go get that backup quarterback? Because it's like certain teams just really want a guy like this. Like
Yeah.
it's so hard to find even Gardner Minshew level quarterbacks in this league. Of course, they're not just trading them around like crazy. Literally, the only circumstance that would happen is like with the Cardinals, where they realize, shoot, he might be a little too good.
Hmm. Yeah. No.
Um,
But they're setting up for the comeback season because I'm gonna list off some of the teams that they still have to play, and they haven't hit their bye week yet too. So that's technically one less game. But they got the Broncos, the Bears, the Packers, because they're all Bears and Packers are same division, and the
right.
the Raiders, and they're all pretty low tier teams. Like sorry
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Love, you're on a low tier team, and then they have
At least for now.
the Raiders and the Saints, which we'll talk about the Raiders in a second. Could go. I feel like those games are definitely either way games, and then Bengals, Lions, and Lions. I I feel like they have enough, not give me games, but they have enough lesser to equal team games that they can pull off a playoff push right now.
I absolutely think so too. Like I really hope they push for it.
All right. And I
Um,
kind of just mentioned it. Hey, Las Vegas, how's it going?
so yes, so there is a prevalent idea in certain NFL circles that like the team that loses or gets their has their coach fired always rallies and wins the next week. And that was the case here. Like remember last year when Jeff Saturday got the job for the Colts and people were obviously outraged that a guy who's never really been an NFL coach before got to be a head coach because Jim Irsay's a crazy person. And
Hmm.
yet they beat of course the Josh McDaniel Raiders because the story has to be a perfect Ouroboros. Um, it happened again, where Antonio Pierce led the Raiders to an absolute drudging of the New York Giants, 30-6. There's actually a lot of little bits from this game we know about.
Hmm.
But I just want to talk about Josh McDaniels and the general, like, so the vibes have completely done a 180. Apparently, like linemen are having wrestling matches in the locker room. Devonte Adams has video of him playing on a little mini basketball hoop. They have cigars. It is so shocking how much they fucking hated Josh McDaniels, who may go down in history as truly one of the most embarrassing head coaches in NFL history. I
What?
just want, like, I feel like we underrated how horrible his tenure was as a head coach for the Broncos in the St. Louis Rams.
Yeah.
So
What was the leak that was said about him at his final meeting?
yes,
Somebody
well, let's start with that.
somebody I don't know if they ever revealed with who it was, but somebody said the rumor mill is somebody kicked a ball at him full force and said, "I don't care, find me." Like what in a
Well, there's an even crazier part. So, like, they were having their like full meeting where all the players are like talking, everyone's airing their grievances. Antonio Pierce, and apparently this is really what pushed him to get the interim job, just gave the speech because he played for the '07 Giants, who had to like claw their way into the playoffs, and then against
yeah.
all odds ended up being the Patriots, who had an undefeated season. He gave the speech about just like perseverance and like how during so many times during that season it felt like they'd hit a rock bottom and like people were
Mhm.
calling for Eli's head and
Yeah.
Coughlin's head, and yet they rallied and it apparently really got the guys fired up. They were really feeling it. And Josh McDaniels takes him aside and goes, "Don't talk about the Patriots like that." And that
Yes,
is
I
truly
remember hearing about that.
emblematic of everything wrong with all of these Patriots coordinators. Like
Oh
these
man.
guys who were born on third are convinced beyond reason they got a triple, and then somehow managed to trip while being guided to home plate. Uh,
Yeah.
he only lasted 2 years with the Broncos. His tenure inexplicably ties in with the Tim Tebow era. Uh, like he's the guy who brings Tebow in, and ultimately Tebow like gets the job after he's fired as a desperation move.
Yeah.
He like rehabilitates his image. Briefly looks like he's going to go to the Colts, but then like acts like, oh, I'm too good for them. Comes to the Raiders the year after they had that weird. Like Mark Davis admits he was going for big names. They went for John Gruden, who then like had all of his emails leaked. They are forced to fire him. Like they really don't have a choice. Henry Ruggs gets in a horrific drunk
Yeah.
driving incident that kills people, and they somehow still make the playoffs. But in reality, it was kind of fool's gold. It was like a lot of guys getting really emotional and rallying in spite of things. And Josh McDaniels comes in and is like, no, that wasn't fool's gold. I can keep winning. Makes, basically sells out to get Devontae Adams, gets rid of gets rid of Derek Carr,
Carr,
seemingly
yeah.
because he was more of like the quote unquote leader in the locker room. Because if you're doing the Patriot way, it's got to be the coach who's in charge, not the players.
Yeah.
Pisses off the entire locker room, brings in a guy they don't like, and basically just it's literally like a replay with Matt Patricia, where all this shit was happening in Detroit too when Matt Patricia was the coach, of just like these guys who are convinced beyond reason that they are geniuses because they happened to coach with one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever live and one of the greatest defensive strategists of all time.
Yeah.
Like that whole Patriot way thing isn't cute when you're not individually talented.
Yeah, no, as much as I do not like the guy, Tom Brady clearly made the Patriots what they were. Like
It's hard to deny that.
especially on offense. It's one of those moments where I gotta eat the humble pie and acknowledge he was a great quarterback. And with what was the mind of Bill Belichick on defense, especially because he is a defense-based coach,
Mm-hmm.
and Tom Brady on the offensive side, who was clearly like a supercomputer, like happening. That's a quality combination. And for all these other coaches and stuff, like some people can afford to take credit for contributing. I'm looking at you, Gronkowski. Definitely, like he was a bull in a china shop that didn't take any crap from anyone. But then you get these guys that are just like, it's me. And you're in a locker room of a team that you are actively failing. Like, not disappointing. You are failing this team.
They wouldn't turn on you if you weren't.
Yeah. And to just go, don't talk bad about the Patriots. They're doing good. Like, they were a good team. That is enemy number one, in my opinion.
The most tone-deaf, stupid, dumb, stupid, selfish, stupid, dense, stupid. Am I forgetting one? Stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and also stupid thing you could possibly do in that circumstance. And he did it because that's just how his brain works, and that's why it was never going to work out.
No, there has to be a certain level of humbleness if you are a head coach to accept your lumps. And some like clear examples are like honestly, Brian Dable's been taking his lumps pretty hard this season.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Sirianni has taken his lumps, and you kind I can't think of his name for who's the head coach of the Dolphins. I can't think of his name at the moment. McDaniel's taken his lumps, in my opinion, and like that's something that makes you a great head coach. And if you are leading a rallying speech in the locker room with 53 NFL starting caliber players, plus or minus however many practice squad, backups, injury reserve who are there, and from like you said, the rumor, the locker room was rallying behind the guy, and that is a lot of big dudes, and that is typically not an easy crowd to work, especially after how much of a bummer of a season they've been having.
Right, especially when like the coaching
to the
has
Bears.
already kind of lost them. They lost to the Bears.
They lost to the Bears badly. And
Yeah, like it was actually they got kind of murked.
yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, that's why Antonio Pierce has a job because it's very difficult to be you know it's very hard to be a leader of men,
yes,
especially grown men. A large percentage of whom
are making a
are
lot of
guys.
money.
Well, I was going to say a small amount who are making a crazy amount of money, a bunch of people who are making good money, and then a lot of people who are fighting every day for their lives to make this crazy dream they have of playing professional sports work.
Hmm.
You are dealing with a lot of different ideas, a lot of different ages, people ranging from guys who can't legally drink yet to guys who are in their 40s and have families.
Yeah,
That is a
which is absurd.
crazy, yeah, that is a crazy chemistry to try and make work. And more often than not, it turns out with these Patriots guys, they think just being a tough taskmaster and being an asshole is enough. And it's like, no, no, that's only working if you're winning, and you're not winning.
I can I can tell you for a fact, if, like, let's say, like, I'm not saying he's going to do this, but like Sean Desai, the defensive coordinator for the Eagles, said something remotely that close to being as good about the Patriots in the Eagles locker room to cause that much of a ruckus, and it got out, there would be just hatred where he wouldn't be safe in the eastern half of Pennsylvania.
Good
Like,
Lord, you're right.
tell me I'm wrong.
You're
And
not.
so it's like Raiders fans are crazy too. So what a set of balls. And then
I
they
truly.
basically rioted against him, and I don't blame them in the
Yeah,
slightest.
and literally that had to be the breaking point where it's just like, oh my, the owner was finally like, all right, this is unsalvageable. I'm just gonna have to live with this.
I'm gonna take the hit, and we're gonna have to rally. And
God knows how I'm gonna pay for any of this.
yeah, and what? Yeah, just that insanity. But I won't deny. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. If Antonio Pierce started going off about that season, that Super Bowl meant a lot to me because I fucking hate the Patriots, and I was
As you
just
should.
so sunk at the idea that I was going to be in the division with two teams that went undefeated, and I can't even get a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
If I'd heard that speech, I would have felt real sorry for the next brick wall that looked at me funny.
Yeah.
Um,
All the running that you're doing is to chase him down. You
yeah,
were just prepping.
that
Oh,
I'm chasing that high of a speech that good.
yeah. I
Um,
I will
but
say the rest of the Raider season, kind of going back to them and how things are looking for them, not looking ideal for them. They got a lot of tough teams. Kansas City twice, Dolphins. Who knows what's going on with the Vikings and Colts? And they have the Jets this upcoming week, and they end the season with the Broncos, who they beat by only 1 point. So I'm not sure how well they can do for the rest of the season. However, if they make a push for the playoffs, it'll be one hell of a Cinderella story.
oh yeah, I mean, I have no faith that that's going to happen, but um, I will say it is like, look, this is about vibes, and then you have to make hard off choices in the off season.
Yeah.
This is absolutely a rebuild. It was probably a rebuild 2 years ago when you traded for Devonte Adams, and you just got to ask, like, on this team of stars and kind of scrubs, how many stars can you afford to keep at the cost of everything else?
Hmm.
Going to our Don't Sleep On game, we talked a
We
fair
talked
amount
Tampa,
about.
Houston, so I'll just say
I'll
that was
get
my pick, and we don't really need to dive into it more than we already have.
my inexplicable My inexplicable pick of Bears Saints. It was kind of an unremarkable game in terms of the outcome. Two kind of one bad team, one middle of the road team. Uh,
Yeah.
again, they've really got to figure out how they're getting Justin Fields back in there because Tyson Bagent ain't it. You have to at
Uh,
least see if Justin Fields could be it. I just want to talk about Taysom Hill, the most infuriating player in the history of the NFL or modern NFL.
Fair.
Um, in the like if this were like the 50s when like Otto Graham was running around, he would probably be considered the best player the world has ever seen. He had a passing touchdown. He ran for 55 yards on 10 carries, and he also caught a touchdown pass. Truly inexplicable. And he's annoying in fantasy. It's insane that fantasy leagues consider him both a quarterback and a
Yes,
tight end.
which is hilarious.
Um, right? That's objectively silly, and I love it. But also, it's like so tough when you see him in your lineup because it's like I said, much like coaches, the main thing is to not get embarrassed. And if like Jamal Adams has like 5 points, you're like, well, I played the numbers and it blew it. But if Taysom Hill was in your lineup and you got 5 points, you look like a fucking moron. So and then when he gets 27 points on the bench, you feel even stupider. There's no winning with him. But I can't believe this guy. I really thought this guy's career would end once Drew Brees left. I really did.
Mm-hmm.
And nope, he's still going. Still having the most insane stat lines that the era of football when the forward pass had just been invented can give you.
Yeah, it's almost insane. And I will say this is definitely the Carter Eats Crow game because you did pick this as your Don't Bother game last week.
Yeah, I can be an adult. I can admit when I'm wrong about things.
All right, we talked about the highs. Let's get into the lows. I'm going to try and keep this brief. The Philadelphia Eagles are their own worst enemy, but Dallas is somehow their own worst enemy worse than the Eagles are. That game,
Yeah,
first half of that game, great game to watch. It was score for score, nothing like there was insane things happening, but also the fact of and it wasn't even the factor of like the Eagles were losing at one point for the majority of that. It was still just it was good football across the board and thoroughly enjoyed too. And then the fourth quarter happened, and I feel like I lost the ability to use my heart.
you guys were losing your minds, which is so funny because I'm like, they're not losing this game. And if they do, it barely counts.
So here's the thing. I wasn't able to participate because I was in an airport for the entirety of that game.
Oh my god, you still need to tell me that whole story.
I'll give you Kevin Sales of the airport at some point. But yeah, I'm in the airport, and like I'm watching the game on my phone with my phone plugged in, trying not to react. And fortunately, at our boarding gate, I'm literally watching the game as I go through security. My phone's in the little tray for to like magnetize, and the game's actively playing on that as it goes through. Um, and you see me like trying to just like following along with my head, just like trying to make it happen. Um, and it was just the first half was like a masterclass of a football game. The second half was a masterclass of a shit show. And for Dallas to get so many penalties, to be walked from deep in enemy territory where it's like, all right, maybe you're not going to score, to basically have your hand held into stupidly easy scoring position, only for that to just be redacted after stupid play is like, wow. What a just bogus bunch of football I just watched. And
right, like the back half didn't feel real. It just felt like, oh, this game is just happening now.
And the fact they could have scored on one of their like many attempts, like the rookie for Dallas, whose name I'm not bothering to learn to give them a personality or associate that they're real human beings, who caught the ball and was down at literally like the half-yard line right in front of the end zone. I would have felt real bad for him if he wasn't on the Cowboys. Hell, I would have felt bad for him if he was on the 49ers. I would have been like, that's tough, buddy. Like
truly truly inexplicably bad luck plays.
Yeah. And then
that again are only not surprising because it's the Cowboys who just have a supernatural ability to have chaos and bad things happen.
Yeah. And then Dak fucking themselves by clearly stepping out of bounds for a 2-point conversion that they called fair for a hot second, and it was not even close. It wasn't like maybe his pinky toes on a blade of a blade of the turf that is just like leaning over, like painted over sideways and stuff. It's like, no, you're clearly half of your foot is out. And it's just like, wow, you get like the Eagles shit the bed, but the Cowboys shit it even worse.
Yeah. But at least you won your game. Should I just get my stuff out of my system?
Yeah, just hit it quick.
All right. I'm tired of blaming Josh Allen. So for some reason, the whole discourse this week is what's wrong with the offense. Josh Allen is always throwing he's throwing an interception a game. Here's the thing. Like, we've had games where Josh Allen had 3 turnovers, where the team had 4 or 5 turnovers, and still scored 40 points. That, like, he has just as many picks as Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. The only difference is our defense cannot get a 3-and-out anymore. There's so few 3-and-outs. They're at least giving up 5-minute drives because they're getting at least 1 first down. Imagine having an entire offseason to figure out what went wrong against the Bengals in those 2, and just not being able to do it. You just still get bodied. You still get manhandled. And yes, I'm aware they have injuries, but like, then where the hell did all of the money go? Like, again, all the people were like, fire Ken Dorsey. When did Ken Dorsey go into Brandon Beane's office with a gun and demand he draft a defensive end who's not on the team anymore, a first-round cornerback who's probably not going to be on the team anymore when you could add Breece Hall? Again, we spent all this money on defensive talent that just isn't making a difference. That it's like the margin for error is so little. Like, of course the offense isn't scoring more points. They have the ball for a third of the game compared to the other team. Like, Dalton Kincaid, who actually did play pretty well, like, he actually showed, like, why you would have picked him in the first round. Like, he had that fumble with 13 minutes left in the fourth quarter. We were down 2 scores. And I was like, oh, that's game. Because even though there are 13 minutes left, I know we are not going to be able to get 2 full drives in. And that has literally been every damn game that we lose, where it's like, literally, the math doesn't process. And a part of that's coaching. A part of that's realizing, like, stop pretending your defense is still good. It isn't. You have to hurry. You have to run for it. You have to pretend you're down 4 every single drive. But it's also, like, I don't know. It's just putting blame in the wrong places. Again, like, I'm mad we wasted a generational talent on this kind of team. They made all of the same mistakes they made with Cam Newton, and he's hurt. And much like Cam Newton, Josh Allen's hurt again. He has his shoulders all dinged up again. It truly is. I mean, I should have known, but it's really annoying.
Yeah,
and that's all I gotta say about that.
All right, Levis loses, but looks like an adult. I'll tell you what, that was a top contender. Like. If Tampa Bay and Houston didn't pull off what they did, I would have put that as my game of the week.
Yeah, like, I don't want to talk about this for too long, but I actually was pretty impressed with Will Levis. Like, his final stat line wasn't the best. He had 226 yards. He was averaging, like, base a little under 7 yards a throw, and he threw a pick on the last drive. The last drive was so ridiculous. He almost threw a pick twice, and then they failed a 4th down conversion, but there was a penalty, and then there was another penalty. And you could tell Al Michaels is just tired of this slog fest. But Will Levis was running, like, he was getting breathed down his neck the entire game. He got sacked 4 times. And to his credit, he was throwing the ball around. He was, like, staying in the pocket. He was staying tough. He just got announced as the permanent starter for the Titans for the rest of the year. And honestly, I think he's earned it just out of sheer, like, competency. Again, all you really want to see from a rookie quarterback is the comfort of knowing he's not going to crack like one of these times when a pass rush gets. And to Will Levis' credit, he showed that. He showed like a sense of leadership that is to be respected.
Yeah, he definitely pulled off some quality run stuff.
This Carter's. One's mine.
Yeah, it's clearly Carter's because it says people are finally admitting Arthur Smith sucks eggs.
Yes, Arthur Smith sucks eggs. It is so funny, because someone had, in order for Dobbs to have his hero story is also the failure of someone else. And this was an emphatic failure from the Falcons, giving up a big lead there was an incredible moment where they got a fumble on the 1-yard line. Bijan Robinson did not get the ball. I believe it was a failed run with Cordell Patterson, a failed end around with their Jonnu Smith, their backup tight end. Another game where Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson barely played. And once again, Arthur Smith just is a complete ass in the post-game interviews where he's talking about toxic groupthink. And then Kurt Warner kind of subtweets him and is like, hey, these are things you could be doing better. And Arthur Smith gets on his case. And it's like, this is one of the 20 best quarterbacks to ever do it. What are you even on right now? And finally, people are waking up to the fact that Arthur Smith might just not be equipped to be an NFL coach. The one time he was successful, it was when he had A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry on the same team with a great offensive line. He had very little qualifications to get into the NFL in the first place. His first job was with the Washington Commanders. And it's like, why is that? And it's like, well, because his daddy owns FedEx, and FedEx Field, he had a partial ownership in the team, and it was called FedEx Field. You listen to his petulant interviews, you see how he doles out carries and constantly goes on about earning your spot on the team, and you realize he really is a nepo baby who can't quite grapple with the fact that he might not have earned any of this. And it is just delightful to see the dam finally give out. It was so annoying when he was winning because he could hide behind this, well, if it works, it's not stupid. It's it was always stupid, and you wasted a golden opportunity to get an easy playoff win this season because you're in a bad division and have a soft schedule. And if he makes it through the year, I might revolt. I'm not even a Falcons fan, and I would revolt. Again, I was the guy saying that when they refused to go after Lamar Jackson, they should go full French protest and cut off utilities to the owner's house.
Yeah. No.
Get a backhoe and stack their cars on top of each other.
Yeah. He's he's just had blunder after blunder, and it almost is too late now for them.
Yeah, and it's they're not even that out of it. I think they're only one game out in their division.
Yeah,
the momentum is just completely dead.
Yeah, they're one game down to the Saints, but the Saints are on quite a turnaround, and they're one game up from the Bucs, who have had, I think they've had their, they've almost had their roughest stretch of the year. Or they're almost finished having their roughest stretch of the year. They have one game with the 49ers, and then every other team that they play is, I don't want to say subpar, but it's not to the same caliber as the Eagles or the Bills or the Lions. So the Buccaneers can easily make a push for that, especially with how they started off the season. Falcons have it kind of easy too, but they don't utilize their weapons. So who's to say?
Yeah, correct.
I think that division will only get their conference winner in for the playoffs, or sorry, not conference, division winner for the playoffs. And then
it really is amazing that we just have a division who we just understand hey, you're literally getting to go to the playoffs because legally someone has to. Because that's the only way the organization of this works.
Meanwhile, if we have to relegate one of our NFC South spots for an AFC North team that totally deserves it, because that is a hot division. Or you know, we throw in Houston.
Yeah, again, it just look, they're basically right next to each other. It's fine. It's fine for this 1 year.
Yeah.
The Texans are new. They don't really have that deep rivalries with them. Heck, wouldn't it be fun to have two Cal-Texan teams in the NFC? They get to play each other more often.
Yeah, you can make something. There's a selling aspect to that. All right, let's talk about some clearly tanking maneuvers.
Yes, this is the first week where it really felt like teams were tanking. And a part of this goes into our other sort of downer lows. So the Cardinals played this week. I'm pulling up the score again because I want to make
0
sure
to
I get these.
27.
And again, I don't think the Browns' offense played any well. It really, really makes me mad that they keep getting let off the hook, basically, in terms of like not having a good offense but still getting to win. Clayton Tune, a man by the name of Clayton Tune, because Joshua Dobbs was traded and
Yes.
Kyler Murray was still getting off the injury protocol. A rookie from Houston. Do you want to know how many yards he got? Guess.
I don't think I want to guess because I am actively looking at the screen.
58.
Yep.
Imagine that. I genuinely feel bad for the players who have been really, really scrappy this year and just kind of got screwed over by a sort of management staff who are basically trying to tip the scales in favor of getting an earlier draft pick.
Oh man, they have that #1 spot locked. If they keep this performance up. However, Kyler might be on the mend. Kyler looks like he's on the mend, and James Conner, their top running back, is also clearly on the mend.
Yes, and I do think because the vibes have been better, they owe Kyler Murray a chance to prove himself, and I do think the coaching staff at least wants to get an earnest shot. But it really sucks it just sucks to go into a game knowing you don't have a chance, knowing you get 58 yards over 60 minutes. Just a true slog. You're getting 2 yards a play. You're not even getting a first down with the amount of yards you're getting per play. Like I just have to imagine that's so miserable. Like again, that's why we're like talking about like, well, you really can't like imagine doing that to someone with how brutal the sport is.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they really weren't the only ones who were tanking. Washington ended up winning, but it goes without saying they got rid of half of their defensive line. 2 like pretty primo players for them. The Patriots, it was a game where 2 teams are arguably tanking at the same time. Ramondre Stevenson was kind of running all over the Commanders, but only got 9 carries.
That's clear. Like, if your player is hot and he's not like getting 9 carries. That's clearly tanking behavior.
Yeah, it's like, there are ways to tip the scales. And especially because it was like a tie game. It was like you were down by 3 for the entire fourth quarter. Surely you have time to run the ball. Instead, you're passing it 44 times. Yeah. They also benched both of their cornerbacks. With like Vincent Jackson Jr., it seems like it's more of an ideological thing because he's also not coming to Germany with them. So it seems like he's just on the outs. But that doesn't explain the other guy. So yeah, this is the first week where it really felt like, Rypien being in the game for the Rams. I don't even know how to even talk about the Giants. Like, you're saying the Giants or the Cardinals have the first overall pick locked up. I think the Giants might be worse. This is truly the season from hell for them. And poor Saquon Barkley's still trying. They have Tommy DeVito in still, and he's just going to keep playing even though he's not in it. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say he's not an NFL quarterback.
No, the Giants, they definitely have it very rough coming up. They got they got at least one division game against every single other team in their division. And I don't like, as much as I don't like tooting the NFC beast horn, they've showed up to play this season for the most part, minus the Giants. So they got a game against the Cowboys, then the Commanders, and then their last 3 is Eagles, Rams, Eagles. That second Eagles game, it might just be the resting the starters game.
Right. And yeah, in terms of like, at least now the dark days are at least on the way out with the Raiders. They're in for a long rebuild, but like the rebuild's starting.
Daniel Jones tore joke. Yeah.
Yes. Daniel Jones tore his ACL, and now you owe him so much money. He is untradeable. You theoretically, like, you can't pass up a quarterback in this draft if you're high enough. If Drake May or Caleb Williams is available, you have to take them. Like, the reason why they have Daniel Jones to begin with is because they kept screwing around getting a replacement for Eli Manning. They kept dragging it out and being like, not this draft. We'll get Barkley this draft. okay, I guess Daniel Jones. Um, and like, that's the embodiment of the like just timing your window completely wrong. Like, I truly one of the most hideous football teams. But it's like if this isn't tanking, I don't know what is. But
Here,
yeah, it's
yeah.
stunning how quickly so many teams can just go and turn it on for this.
And it also just makes me feel bad for some of their more longevity players, like Dexter Lawrence, te- like
Hmm.
great defensive tackle, can't deny that. And Saquon Barkley, I just feel so it is like how we refer to it as the Zach Wilson Jets, not the New
Yeah.
York Jets, the Zach Wilson Jets.
Hmm.
It's it's not the Giant. It's not the New York Football Giants. It's not the Giants. It is Dexter Lawrence and the defense, which has some star power.
I really do like Kayvon Thibodeau. He's kind
I
of one of
like
my
Thibodeau
guys.
too. I just don't know how to pronounce his name without hearing it first. Um,
Got you.
so many
It
letters,
took me a while. No,
and
again, the funny thing is, I'm not that much better at spelling or pronunciation than you, but like I went to school for arts, so I can pretend better. But yes, it took me a while of just hearing it to learn it through osmosis.
yeah, and then the offense for the Giants, in my opinion, is Saquon Barkley and these other guys. Because you also have like Daniel Jones out, Tyrod out. I think Darren Waller, their tight end, also out. It
Again, the
is,
fact that he got 5 yards of carry in this again, and that's like my thing with the Bills and James Cook. It's like he's not an elite running back, so we don't have a real, and we're not good at scheming him yards, so we
mm-hmm.
don't have a running game. You like if you don't have a coach who can scheme up things or a really great offensive line, you need Saquon Barkley. You need a guy who can just make
Yeah,
yards. That's why
he
these
makes it
guys are worth
happen.
their weight in gold.
And once again, just like last time, he had 16 carries. And that's just pure rushing, and that is a little over double, or sorry, little under double what every other rushing was made.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not including the receiving yards he's gotten and stuff. And it's just like you are beating this man, this poor man, into the ground with your offense. He's the only thing you have going for you, but you are just beating him down senselessly.
But if he's not going to win, I don't know. I just want him to get yards. I don't like. I at least want him to have good stats when this is said and done.
Yeah,
So I
like
don't even know what to think of it at this.
I understand the wanting to have him have good stats, but also you just part of me wants to just be like, just stop it. Like he's had a good enough career to this point where he can easily find a role on another team. I feel like if he were to open up any form of like connections or conversations with other teams, he wouldn't be someone like Leonard Fournette, or where it's just like he sits in purgatory for a hot minute before getting picked up halfway through the
Mhm.
season, or like Miles Sanders, where it's like you're clearly going to you'll definitely get your payday, but you might be going to an inferior team.
Mhm.
Like he's got enough power behind him that any team that has, I would say, a bottom a bottom 2/3 of like in the ranking of starting running backs, he has a he has a chance to easily be moved through those guys like it's nothing. And if they have the
And it
cap
just
for it,
comes down to if he wants it or not.
yeah. If he wants it, because he's at the point where he can negotiate himself. But like the Vikings might be on a rampage, and they might be in need of a running back. He could have easily gone there, and obviously not at this point in the season, but he could have gone there and made shit happen, and
Right.
had it not just be the Saquon Barkley show.
Right. Our only other low light we mentioned was It was one of the other big games of this week. Baltimore, Seattle. Seattle just got run. I'm
Oh,
really shocked. Like, there's a lot of Seattle Seahawks fans, the ESPN, like sort of mainstream football sphere, and like it is weird hearing how many Seahawks fans are done with Geno and done with this team. This just really was one of those games where it's kind of what happened to the Lions. You just wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and the next thing you know, the other team's up by 14. I kind of feel bad. They didn't even. It's so weird. You watch the game and they didn't even play bad. They just got beat.
yeah. They got beat, and it's one of those. I feel like the Seahawks are very prone to those humbling games this season, kind of like the Lions, where they don't. They have very clearly winning seasons, but if they lose, it is a harsh loss.
Oh yeah. And honestly, to like for me, as exciting as it has been watching the Ravens, my one worry is this team getting too hot too soon? Like, are they going to run out of steam? Um, uh, are they going to run out of steam over the next like by the end of the season? But I don't know. I'm very another thing. I'm very glad Doc carried through.
They do have a week 13 bye, so that is a pretty late bye to rest up,
Mm.
and it's just about they're hot right now. How hot can they stay? Because the rest, like I said earlier, the rest of the division it's a hot division, and while they do have a clear lead of being up 2 games from everyone else, they still have to play their entire division again with some higher caliber teams of the 49ers and Jaguars and Dolphins. And they could slip up.
Mhm.
They can definitely slip up, and that's what's great and also scary is they're going to go their last 4 games of the season are Jaguars, 49ers, Dolphins, Ravens. And if they stay on the pace that they're currently on, and all the teams stay on the pace that they're currently on, they might be behind the Chiefs, where the Chiefs get that bye week. So that's an additional game before they have to play more playoff caliber teams.
Right. Um, yeah. Going on to our notes, the other big game we have our games in Dolphins, Chiefs.
Yeah, Dolphins
Um,
Chiefs, pretty concise game. I, from what I saw, it wasn't a blowout. It wasn't an
yes,
amazing
it
game.
looked like it was going to be the blowout because it was 21-0 going into um, and then the Chiefs just could not buy a point, but it turns out their defense very good.
Yeah, very good defense, and I f- they had a very solid. Both teams had a very solid showing.
Mhm.
Like,
Um,
I,
I will say, like, I'm putting the Dolphins slightly on fraud watch, which I know is hip. The Bills have played, but I've seen the Bills win a playoff game,
yeah,
which
no,
gives them at least a little bit of a free pass.
no Dolphins. I can understand Dolphins being on fraud watch because they have they haven't done good against higher caliber teams. It's like the complete opposite setup of the Jets, where, with the exception of like they win against high caliber teams, or honestly, I feel like the Jets got robbed against their game against Kansas City.
I don't know. I mean, I'm so like the ref is just we really have to have higher standards for refs.
Make NFL refs a full time job. I'm just saying. Um,
It's insane. It's actually inexplicable. It isn't at this point. There's too much money being gambled on these.
yeah, and so it's just one of those things where it's just like we talked about the possible ability to have a Cinderella story from the Raiders. The Josh the Josh Dobbs led Vikings possibly just turning around. Like, they were already on the turnaround, but now they might turn it up. And then I feel like we might have the inverse of the Dolphins, where, like you said, fraud watch.
Yeah, but I will say it is very. I don't know. I like again. I'm not a fan of the international series, but I really do like the stadium they played this game in. It was very
Yeah.
aesthetically pleasing. They worked on a semi, like a hybrid grass that was part
Yeah.
synthetic, part grass. Um, can't deny there is. It seems like there's an audience. They literally had like
Yeah.
theaters screening the game for people who couldn't get to the stadium. Not gonna deny, I am a little impressed, even though again, I'm just like, I just don't love the logistics. Like, I really think you just have to set a standard where you either have the bye week right after or the bye week before, and that's the only way to make this work.
Yeah.
But
I can respect what they did, though. Actually, I think both teams do have the bye week right after. I think both of them are on our bye week. Yeah, both teams have a bye week this
oh
upcoming
well, at least they thought about it for this one.
week. Yeah. They. I think this was a great representation of a NFL game abroad.
Mhm.
I think,
The fact that this is one of the games they're sending is a big sign.
yeah, that it's a good sign and a big sign, but it's not like, honestly, Jacksonville versus Atlanta in England, eh. Like, Jacksonville Bills made sense, but
Mhm.
Jacksonville against Atlanta, that you're not sending your best, or like you're not sending out the delegation. But having two of the top caliber teams go out and play in a very meaningful conference game is a great showing. Another good matchup, at least for this year, would have been if they did their Kansas City's Week 11 game against the Eagles as a Super Bowl rematch abroad. That would be a crowd getter.
It is tricky to find the like middle ground between a great game, but not one you want to like gatekeep behind like a 9 a.m.
Yeah,
like morning game. I sympathize a little bit with the ambition of like how do we balance this, but at the same time I'm like I don't know. It's just it's one of those things. Probably just need to be slightly less stubborn about it.
yeah. No, you want, like, I was just like, me saying a Super Bowl rematch was purely in terms of just having a great showing abroad.
Hmm.
That being said, you definitely want to keep that in America because the amount of money that the NFL will make off that game next when they play is going to be absurd. Um,
Oh yeah,
they're going to make a stupid amount of money off of it. But you don't want to send out the dud force. If you're playing Cardinals versus Panthers out there, what are you doing? But you don't want to be, you like we just said, you don't want to send out your top tier teams. I feel like another good matchup could be like Seattle versus like San Francisco. They got the division thing going. Both teams are pretty hot. Like, that's a caliber level game of, we're gonna show up and we're gonna play.
yeah. Like outside of doing like his quote unquote historical matchups, which I guess is what's coming up, Colts Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like yeah, it's got to be part. You got to find a perfect middle ground between interesting players and exciting. Like these are two good teams. Like Bills Jags. It's like well, these are two of the nice young quarterbacks in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Chiefs Dolphins. It's like two of the more interesting offenses.
Yeah.
Like again, selling sports is selling stories. You have to figure out how to sell stories, and it's especially challenging like in a world that's known soccer all of their lives, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, um, where it's like, like you're good.
They
Like
got
there's
their
literally
own
like
stories.
100-year legacies with some
Yeah.
of these sporting teams.
There
You
are
you have to
some
rival that legacy and scope.
Yeah, there are some legacies, and like there are teams that have history of some capacity in the city that is longer than the NFL has existed. And like the pre-NFL football too, which is absurd. when you look at it in like the grand scheme of things. But
Hmm.
as as much as I hate to admit it, I think I think a top representing game for an abroad game would be the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, versus the Kansas City Chiefs, the current dynasty to beat.
That would be a fun one.
I feel like that.
Yeah, like stuff like that. Yeah, like I like this little brainstorming session. It is like again, as much as I don't like the fun to think of ways to sell it.
Yeah, we'll make a
Uh,
special bonus episode at some point of us scripting the NFL.
that's
Um,
pretty funny.
Mid-season check-in. We've been doing all episode. Is there any one thing that you want to highlight at this point in the season that doesn't involve our question of the week about
Hmm.
just something you've noticed at this point, something you're interested to see what happens with anything
I
different?
I truly did not think there would be this much parity in the NFL. You know, like we talk about like how stacked the AFC is and how like top heavy the NFC is. It is truly insane that out of the entire NFL, like in the AFC alone, there are 11 out of the 16 teams are at 500 or better.
Mm-hmm.
Three NFC North teams are in the playoffs. Like
Yeah,
effectively, there's really only one team that feels meaningfully eliminated in the AFC. And even in the NFC, there are only four that I'm fully comfortable crossing off. And that's still only 25% halfway through. Compared to some other years, that just feels so much better. Like, I'm actually impressed how many teams, like, I know we just talked about tanking, but outside of like three or four big examples, it's actually very nice to see how
yeah,
many teams are just putting in an earnest effort.
yeah. Because if you want to think about it, like AFC East is not decided upon yet.
Hmm.
Dolphins, Bills, and Jets all can make a push, being over like 500 or over, and AFC West almost certainly going to the Chiefs. But like I said, Raiders Cinderella story. The AFC South and AFC North are going to be the divisions to watch because Texans are really hitting their stride and have a little bit of an ease of a schedule coming up.
Hmm.
And Jacksonville, while they are doing good, and if the season ended today, they would have been the representative for the division. However, Texans and Colts could still fight for that wild card spot. And then the AFC North is just competition.
Just the usual like rock fight that it always is, but
Yeah.
turned up to 11.
Yeah, it's not the rock fight of who's going to make it into the game, like the playoffs. It's honestly going to be who are they going to be keeping out of the playoffs this season.
Mm-hmm.
And then NFC is kind of a crap show. Like
Yes.
like the South is not decided. The North is no longer decided. And East and West are going to probably have multiple teams in it. Um but yeah. All right, so question of the week. What is
Yes.
excluding the Bills for you and excluding the Eagles for me due to my I don't believe in jinxing, however, I'm not going to chance it policy.
Yes.
What is one bold second half of the season prediction? So in the next 9 weeks, right before playoffs, what do you think is some crazy thing that it's going to happen?
See, I have ones that are tangential. Gentle?
I don't know.
I have ones that are adjacent to the Bills. One of my big ones is I actually think the Texans are going to win the division.
All right, I can
But
respect that.
that doesn't feel surprising. I just feel like they are getting momentum. The Jacksonville's doing well. They are 6-2. Like, but I have this sinking feeling of like they feel like a team who like is a little too feeling themselves too soon. Like a lot of these games, it just feels like they're not putting away quickly enough, and it feels like a team that's like, oh, we can turn it on when we need to, turn it on when we need to, and then when they do it, it'll like when they have to, they might not be ready to go. One of my more radical ones that I think I'm just trying to wish cast is that the Dolphins won't make the playoffs. But then I look at their schedule and I'm like, I don't know, it's not the hardest schedule in the world. Like they beat everyone who they had to at this point, and like barring a few a rally or two from the Jets and the Raiders, like they should still probably get enough games. One of my bolder ones is Kyler Murray will end up winning Back Player of the Year. That's probably what I'm going to go with. I mean, it's tricky because it's like it feels like it's guaranteed to go to Damar Hamlin. But after the awkwardness that was the Sunday night game where they had so many packages for Damar and then they had to qualify, well, he's not playing tonight because the Bills have only dressed him for one game. I think there is going to be, I don't know, like, and again, I don't like talking about this too much because it just feels like a messy discourse, but I do think there's going to be talk at the end of the year of like, he only played one game, and he's probably going to end up only playing one game. And if Kyler comes out and is like what he was before he got hurt, I do think there's at least going to be some very messy discussions about it.
Yeah, that's not going to be a clean discussion. If Kyler rallies, it's not going to be a clean discussion.
Some of my more random ones, I think Frank Wright's going to be fired. I think San Francisco might miss the playoffs. Yeah, those are kind of my big ones. The Giants will get the first pick. Otherwise, I don't know. This season's been so chaotic. I genuinely don't know what to.
Yeah. I've got a couple of just random things. I think that Caleb Williams is not going to declare for the draft this season.
Oh?
I feel like that might be a little bit of a hot take because he still has he has the ability for an extra year. And I feel like the lower caliber teams that have, like, it's going to be pretty clear who needs a quarterback in this upcoming draft. And I think he's not going to declare. He's got a little bit of an attitude that's been documented for how he's looking at through the process, and my statement still stands.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm so curious because it's tough because this is a very good quarterback class, and my understanding is the next one isn't as good. Although I guess it depends if the Sanders kid ends up declaring or not.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Caleb at this point because it's like USC is actually not that talented team. Like their defense is very bad. They lost some tough games. He has played pretty well, but a lot of his like flaws have been revealed, and like maybe we jumped the gun with the generational prospect thing so soon after Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
And it does feel like when it gets time to compare him to Drake May, it's going to be this weird discussion because Drake May is more quote unquote prototypical quarterback. And like it's a lot of raw football stuff because Caleb he cries and he does he paints his nails and
he does
commercials.
Some of my other takes. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say finish.
More or less. Yeah, I it wouldn't surprise me, but I just think it's really hard to get down the most.
Yeah. A couple of my other takes is I think the Ravens are gonna be bumped out by that out of that division spot. Like, and I'm not saying they're out of the playoffs. That's definitely that's far from what I'm saying. But the competitiveness that is that division this season, I think they obviously have the most to lose. And
True.
The Bengals are on a rally. They're on a 4-game win streak. The Browns have been surprisingly good, but also against some subpar teams. And the Steelers are stupidly consistent as always. And they pulled an upset over the Ravens earlier this season. Still have another game against them to go. And, they could I think out of all the divisions, that's going to be the one to have the biggest mix-up for this divisional spot. I'm not saying people are going to get knocked out of playoffs, but I think they're by far the closest and the most competitive about it across the entire division.
Yeah. I never want to make too many hard and fast predictions about the NFC North because it's just so chaotic in like the like in the division games.
Like every NFC division has at least one team that's almost pretty clearly out of running. But the AFC, specifically the North, definitely doesn't have that. AFC South, technically the Titans aren't out of it, but they're pretty much out of it. So yeah, and then also, I think Belichick's gonna get fired before playoffs.
Oh wow, really?
I think from things I've seen at the rumor mill and stuff, and how they've been doing, like they're a 2-17. This is clearly the worst. I think this is definitely the worst Patriots that he has coached, and I don't think. I think it will be more of. I think it'll be more of a not a mercy firing, but at least end while you're still in consideration for one of the better coaches. Maybe rally on a different team. Tom Brady's a partial owner for Vegas. I'm sure he can just twinkle his eyes at the right people and get Belichick hired as the head coach there. And they can be together again. But Patriots have potentially a really rough rest of the season to go. And I don't like to have a lot of expectations for coaches getting fired, but this is definitely the worst Belichick has done. He might just be out.
That is a bold one. I appreciate you bringing the actual sizzling takes here.
Yeah, I try.
And moving on to next week to go through our buys. A pretty big week for buys. We have Kansas City, Miami, and Philly, 3 considered top contenders, all getting their week off. Yeah. All probably coming at good times. Miami and Kansas City needing, appreciating the break from Germany and being able to readapt to the time zone.
And Philly, so my heart can calm down for a week.
Yes. And on top of that, the LA Rams, who I guess are getting Carson Wentz ready.
It at least gives them time so they're not pulling a Josh Dobbs.
Yes, I do not believe Carson Wentz has it in him to do that, or even a Baker Mayfield level unexpected surprise.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, the Baker Mayfield was that was a crazy rally, and Baker Mayfield's one of those people that it's just he's got that just weirdness attitude about him that it's you know what, I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the elite level quarterback that it's oh, crazy situation happens, Patrick Mahomes all of a sudden to the Giants, and it's just oh yeah, this guy's gonna bring this entire team around. But it's not Desmond Ridder, he goes to the Rams now, and you're just oh, what are they doing? And it's Baker Mayfield is this is weird.
And if Baker Mayfield's enough of a vibes guy to make that situation work. Carson Wentz is anti-vibes.
Yeah. All right.
And again, I want to feel bad for him. I do. But at the same time, he doesn't do me any favors. It's Ben Simmons again, where I'm you actually have grievances, and I do empathize with you. But God, could you just make it a little easier? Could you just have a little bit of humility about what went wrong?
Yeah.
And self-awareness?
They could. They won't, but they could.
They could. Yes. So our don't bother games of the week. You have the floor.
Alrighty. I talked about it last week because I was looking ahead just to see what the week was, and my guns are sticking. It's still going to be Carolina versus Chicago. Would I have considered other games if this was at the Sunday 1 o'clock time slot? Yes. But it's like Kevin the scheduling guy always says. You got to have, there are like 3 you're the only game playing time slots. And if the NFL wants to catch attention of people, they got to put I'm still a firm believer of the best game has to be Sunday Night Football. Like, that has to be the best matchup of the week. And then Monday Night Football also has to be probably the second best. And then Thursday night has to be the most wild cardy game, where you are playing 2 teams where you might not, like, people might not like the teams, but you're definitely going to catch some attention with those.
Mm-hmm.
And Carolina and Chicago, with the seasons they've been having and how it's with the days of modern social media and stuff, how it's clearly not a secret how they've been doing. Excuse me. I think Patrick Starr will get somebody fired. He's not going to participate in the game, to my knowledge, but I think he will get somebody fired.
Oh, no, because it's Prime Video, they can't get him. He's only on the CBS broadcast.
Oh, then who's an Amazon figure?
The Lord of the Rings characters, Invincible.
The guy from Invincible will.
Yeah, Mr. Invincible. Or
Joey,
Omni-Man. Just get J.K. Simmons. He can yell at somebody.
J.K. Simmons and the group of Vox Machina from Critical Role's animated series, which is pretty good, by the way.
Yeah, I've been meaning to watch that. I don't know.
They will get somebody fired.
Right. Probably. Mine is just Indy, New England. I know we were just talking for Europe, but then thinking about this, I'm just like, I respect the Colts more than I like watching them without Anthony Richardson, and I'm just like, am I really? You could get me to wake up for Kansas City, Miami. Yep.
What are we sending?
Germany, baby.
Why?
I don't know.
I thought
this seemed more exciting when Mac Jones's career wasn't officially over.
I thought that was just kind of like a one-off comment by you about them playing.
No.
I didn't realize that we were actually sending them abroad. Why do we hate them?
Yeah.
Why do we hate the Germans?
Yeah. A number of reasons, starting from guys that won to World War II.
Like, at least we gave them the Miami. Like, we should have given them this first and then given them Miami, Kansas City.
Right. If we were doing an
good note.
Yeah. No. This is to remind them that they still owe us for 2 wars worth of debt. But yeah, I'm like, these teams are much less exciting than I thought they would be. And again, it's 9 a.m. Like, again, you could convince me to wake up earlier on a Sunday for Miami, Kansas City. I'm not doing that for this game. No thank you.
If I knew they were playing, I would have agreed with you.
Yeah, I would. You probably would have. We probably wouldn't have spent so much time pontificating about games in Europe.
Yeah.
No.
No, like Panthers Bears. Like, at least it's in a regularly scheduled, like, non-special time slot. If it's like special time slot, you gotta show up and present. And with how what if Bill Belichick gets fired abroad? That'd be insane.
I think he's done too much for the league to have that happen.
Yeah, they'll
just on principle
quietly fire him afterwards. All right, now let's get. Now that I'm a little heated, let's get to the don't sleep on games.
Yes, yours is San Francisco, Jacksonville.
Yes, I think this. I kind of talked about it a little bit last week. I think this is a huge game for both teams. But first off, both teams had a bye this week. So
yes.
they got to take the week off, sit up with their feet up at the Waffle House. It's what I assume Trevor Lawrence was doing, because that is the only thing I think
Do they have those in Florida?
Yeah. He won after their AFC conference or AFC.
Oh, yeah, I remember this.
He celebrated at a Waffle House, and now that's how I assume he spends every second of his free time, is just at the Waffle House. Um,
I don't know. He looks like he could.
yeah. But they're pretty hot this season. They're one of those teams that has been doing secretly good despite the reputation that they've been getting about things. They've been getting like a lot of like, oh, these guys kind of suck, but they're still like 6-2. Um, and San Fran, once again, another team that is 5-3, so slightly worse of a record, but probably a better team overall. But they are on a losing streak. They're on a,
Mm.
they're 5-3, and I believe, and they lost 3 games in a row. Yeah, yeah, they lost their last 3 games were all their losses, so they have not been able to pick up any momentum. So I feel like this was a good time for them to get their shit together, and I feel like this game could, if San Francisco, if it is a close game in any regards, I feel like it won't set any tone for the season. However, if Jacksonville wins in the 49ers play like clearly play subpar at least, that's that's going to be not a season ender, but that is going to start them off for the second half of their season with crap momentum.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've talked enough about the very real possibility that um, the and I'm the one defending it. I've been defending him playing that bad, but we really haven't talked about the possibility that uh, Brock Purdy's play could just go into a pit, and
Yeah.
truly what that would actually mean for this era of 49ers football.
Yeah, and I think I would have given them a little bit more of an advantage if the 49ers were at home, but they're going to be in Jacksonville. And they've got a they don't have a super out of area popular fan base, but
Hmm.
their fans at home they're pretty intense. And they got some not really messing around teams like the Eagles, Seahawks, Ravens, Seahawks again. The Cardinals who beat the Cowboys, so maybe they can also beat them. Who knows?
Hmm.
Probably not, but who knows? Um, so I feel like this Jacksonville game is going to be definitely a tone setter for them on how well they can maybe not win the division or like, but it can knock them out of the winning the division. Probably won't knock them out of playoffs, but it can humble the shit out of them. And for yours, you have Detroit versus the Chargers.
A classic game of the team where fetch happened and the team where fetch hasn't happened. These are two teams over the last few years that have been really hyped up by sort of the football discourse community. Detroit, building it the right way, building from the inside, getting drafting really well, drafting real winners. Um, and the Chargers, they have the hot, sexy quarterback. They're favored by analytics. All their numbers suggest they should be constantly competing for the playoffs, yet it's never happening. Detroit is the team that's living up to everyone's wildest hopes of look at what this team could be on paper. And the Chargers have consistently been, the opposite of that, constantly finding a way to shoot themselves in the foot. And if your game could set either of those teams off a crappy momentum path, if if the Chargers have a bad showing here, I think that is strike two on the Brandon Staley's not making it out of the season
Yeah,
sort of
that's
wheel.
that's on your
Like,
bingo card.
right. That's one of my big bingo cards because it's this is one of the games you kind of have to win if you want to compete in the NFL. And if you can't, then what are we doing here? If you can't beat them in the regular season, you probably can't beat them in the playoffs. So why don't we just,
Yeah.
get all of it out of the way?
I will say, with the Eagles having a bye, and this is the first weekend in a little bit where they're either not playing at 1 o'clock or I'm not busy that day for a good portion of it. I'm
Mhm.
excited to just watch other teams play football.
It really is pleasant, isn't it?
It's because I technically have no stakes going into this week, and the divisional matchups for the Eagles, it's Cowboys versus Giants, and as much as I'd love to see the Cowboys lose, they're versing the Giants. They're versing Saquon Barkley. That's not fair. um, and I have no idea who
It's
Washington's playing. I can't find. Oh, Washington's playing the Seahawks, which is another like
could be fun.
could be fun. It might be enjoyable to watch. We beat
Can't
Washington
say Sam Howell
twice.
doesn't put on a show.
Yeah, we the Eagles beat Washington twice already, so I'm not really like nervous about them at all because we don't have to play them again. So whatever happens isn't technically up to us.
Hmm.
But no, I feel like there's gonna be a lot of sleeper like a lot of games that I'm just gonna be able to sit back and enjoy.
I couldn't agree more.
Alrighty, Carter, send us home.
Thank y'all so much for listening to yet another episode of Carter and Kevin Explain Football. As we reach the midpoint of the year, we are setting up to have a sort of mid-season retrospective episode with our fellow Caspodians. We hope you're looking forward to that. And until next time, get out there and kick a field goal, even though you've never done that before in a game.
Bring me Soldier Boy's game console.